Hello, I'm Nexus8846, and welcome to a review of Bumblebee movie Ravage and Soundwave. Starting off with Ravage. The painting and the sculpting is really good. There's details on his side of the legs and behind his little armpits there that mimic the joints and the cassette holes that the G1 toy had, except this time they just kind of look like random mechanical detailing that could be joints where his body flexes, which kind of is some smart design, I'm going to be honest. This is also probably the most articulated mainline Ravage toy we have gotten, like, ever, with more than two joints per leg, and the head can also move up and down, and even the jaw can open and the tail can wiggle. It's a lot, and you would expect that for a core class. Here you can see he also carries a lot more animalistic form to him, and you can also see some of the details that I was talking about earlier. Something that is odd to me is his face is more lupine rather than feline. He looks more like a fox with how fat the head is and then going down into the super skinny nose and mouth area. He's also got these weird things hanging off of his jaw, which don't look like anything. Like, is this like referencing a lion's mane? Why are they only on the bottom of his jaw? Why are these plates just here? The hell is this? But anyways, you can also see that he also is a lot more bulky, which makes for a more realistic animal mode. But if one thing is for sure, he is a small boy. This is easily the smallest core class figure they have ever released. And this isn't even just because he's on all fours, this physically feels like he is smaller. This was done, of course, to fit into his respective Soundwave's chest. But, I don't know. I didn't exactly pay a lot of money for this, but if I had paid full retail price for it, then I'd feel a bit gypped. His accessories are on the more mainline 3mm peg system that the other core class figures have used. So you could just flat out give his rockets and missile pod to someone else, I guess. He also comes with this little blaster thing. Uh, Again, core class figures can hold it. There's a peg on the underside of it. But otherwise, this doesn't exactly have anything to play into until later. While it's going to be revealed, it does look a hell of a lot like a Soundwave's blaster tip, doesn't it? Though the back of the rockets and the tip of the gun, however, are also still blast effect compatible, despite the fact that they're no longer selling blast effects anymore. I don't get why they're not selling blast effects anymore, though. They're very useful for animation. Otherwise, this thing doesn't exactly interact with Ravage much. There's just this port on the underside, and, well, you can plug it in there and give him a weird laser penis. But removing the space penis from him, and bringing in some kind of anime figure flight stand, means he is very easy to get airborne, which also means he's very easy to animate running, or just jumping up at something, which, coupled with the small size, is very good, especially for animators like me. It's especially useful for mid-air transforming into box mode, so that way he can be animated coming out of Soundwave's chest, which you couldn't do, really, with most of the Siege cassettes, because they didn't have ports like this. It makes it easier. I'm not saying animating those is impossible, it's just animating this is more fun, as you saw in the opening clip. Speaking of box mode, some parts forming is involved to get the missile pod from his back to his stomach, and to get the rockets from his hips to the tail, which is done to facilitate the need in order to get into Soundwave's chest. But, I don't know. This alt mode doesn't look like anything. It uses parts forming. There's some extra engineering stuff which I didn't quite expect it to do, but otherwise, I don't know. It's exactly as nothing as the thing seen in the movie for the few frames that we saw it, I don't know, man. This just doesn't do anything for me. It's not like a cassette where I can just look at it and be like, okay, yeah, that's a cassette. It's just a box. Um, you can just put his laser dick on top and have him be a box that shoots things. Yeah. Really, though, this is just the storage mode for Soundwave himself. Speaking of Soundwave, he turns into he turns into space invader?
Bumblebee, you're needed on the field. What are you doing?
Oh, Wheeljack just installed this new battle simulator. I've been giving it a shot.
Looks interesting. There's just something so familiar about. Hey, wait a minute! Oh.
Yeah, needless to say, this is exactly what I expected it to be. In the movie, Soundwave didn't have an alternate mode, much like a lot of the designs from that movie. But considering the deluxes in this wave of figures and how well they've handled having their own alt modes despite, not transforming in the movie, I feel like they could have absolutely done better than this. Like, we just got out of Siege, which tackled amazingly giving designs that weren't meant to be Cybertronian vehicles, Cybertronian vehicle designs, which were still pretty convincing. So it baffles my mind how they just ran out of ideas for this. It's not even like it fits the aesthetic of the other Cybertronian designs from the movie. It just doesn't. It looks like a crumpled up robot. That's the main thing wrong with it. And to make it worse, there's screw holes facing up on it, which, like, come on. I mean, they do allow you to plug the weapons in different places and gets you a bit of a different configuration, which kind of looks like a little gunship. I don't know. This leaves nothing to the imagination for me. Just, it's nothing. Skipping a step in the transformation leaves the fake chest. Wait, hold on. This has no set design to adhere to for the vehicle mode. Why is it using fake parts? Anyways, leaving the fake chest inside reveals two more ports that allows you to plug the weapons in. And I personally like to add in Ravage's laser tip here, and it makes a decent looking Macer tank, I guess. It definitely makes a far more functioning alt mode. It still doesn't look like much, but hey, it gives off some kind of space tank vibe now. Plus, it gains some articulation to boost, so, okay. But luckily, there's three things guaranteed in life: death, taxes, and a Soundwave will always have a crappy fan mode into a cassette player. And it actually manages to do a decent job at it. Hasbro, why didn't you just invest in doing this? Like, so what? It's not an alien vehicle mode. It's still an alt mode. It's something. And it actually looks kind of decent. I also like to add the gun that Ravage comes with to this mode to make it more appear like an antenna. Because, it's some kind of space communication station or literally just a frickin' radio. Who cares? It looks so much better than the alt mode they gave us. Why, Hasbro, didn't you just invest in making this kind of an alt mode look good for it? Unfortunately, it does need one of the guns in order to stay upright, but for the purposes of my animation practice, it's not going to be facing from a side angle too much, or if it is, there's going to be other stuff blocking it, so I don't know. Plus, if Hasbro had made this the actual mode, they could have put in some engineering to make it stand on its own. But from the back, his head is exposed. But the reason this alt mode works so well for me is the ability to move the arms back, which allows the legs to get up to the side. Not every Soundwave figure is able to do this, so the fact that this can makes it a lot better looking of an alt mode. For reference, here is the Siege Soundwave going into its cassette player mode. This is the only configuration that lets the arms get out of the way to put the legs next to the torso, and it doesn't look much like the G1 version, but it still looks decent. But yeah, this figure's doing it way better, so there's that. And then here's a comparison of all three Soundwave boys. Now on to robot mode. The mode that, supposedly, is the reason why the alt mode was so trash. So, considering how bad the alt mode was, this robot mode must be really, really good, right? Like, well beyond figures with actual alt modes, right? God damn it. Okay, your therapist told you to look at the positives. The legs look good. The knee can bend to show some inner working details, kind of like a Gundam. The red lining on the chest is painted on the inside of the glass, whereas everything else is painted on the outside, which gives it a neat 3D effect. It's neat. The gun is able to move far out of the way, which allows him to actually look around himself without being hindered. But, no. That's it. I can't think of anything else. This robot mode is just so, so hindered. The head sculpt looks a lot more squished and squashed from the movie, giving off the impression that this was designed on concept art rather than being released 4 years after the movie came out? What the? Anyways, this results in him having this depressed expression on his face. He looks like Ravage got space rabies and now he's got to put him down. It's making me depressed. He's got these shoulders that everyone hates, but typically it's done for the sake of a transformation. For instance, on the Hot Rod figures, the shoulder out joint can't be located within the arm because it has to have a wheel there. But on Soundwave, the transformation could have been anything they wanted, and they chose to do this anyways. But the reason they did it here is the strangest reason I've ever seen at all. The shoulders have these flaps that allow the arm to move forward, and the actual shoulder armor proper doesn't move with the arm when you're just posing it. And yet they had this part move anyways? So we get hindered shoulders for this. Who designed this? There's so much over-designing going into how the shoulder joint moves, and it just completely ruins it. Why? Why have you done this? Okay, well, the elbows, hands, knees have double joints, which means they should get a lot of range, right? No. Due to how fat the design is, they barely get more than a typical single joint. And I'm not saying that it's impossible, but why? Why only this amount? These two transforming figures, at lower price points, get better bends out of a single elbow joint. This also heartbreakingly means that Soundwave doesn't have the joint mobility to press his own tape eject button. Which, I mean, fair, he didn't do that in the movie, but I still feel robbed. So you end up having to push the button yourself. Now, I get the spring-loaded tape door button on Soundwave figures, but it completely prevents you from animating it open. So, considering he can't even press it himself, why not just let it open with friction? Please. And opening the door allows you to see the fake cockpit on the inside. Luckily, you can put Ravage in there to cover it up, though. And actually, with the way Ravage transforms, he does look kind of cool in there. Okay. But of course, this figure can't let me be happy for more than 1 minute because putting Ravage in the chest causes the back to unpeg. Because there's not enough room for Ravage in there. Why would you design it like this? Why give it the fake cockpit? The fake cockpit is ruining so many aspects of this figure. You could have done anything you wanted with the transformation. And all the choices you made makes the figure worse. Learning absolutely nothing from Siege, Starstream. He has a waist flap. And it's above his waist swivel. Which means if you rotate the waist, he looks terrible. Ugh. Luckily, you can pop it off, but this just highlights how long and the legs are and how short the arms are and just how disproportionate this is. The waist flap and hips section is also the only point of this design that looks like an actual movie-verse design with odd shaping and intelligent greebling, which makes it look like this is how the joints move. And it's so out of place on this design because everything else is so smooth and just panel lines. This is the only point of this kind of detail in almost every single one of the Bumblebee movie designs. Ugh. Going back to the point on the double joints, they barely get over 90 because of how fat the design is, but also just because there's a panel in there for the transformation into the nothing mode. I'm hurt. I'm just hurt by this. Once again, this figure is beaten out by figures with actual alt modes, and they only use one joint. So, the transformation sucks. The articulation is just meh. Where are all these sacrifices going? Oh no. He's tall. That's it. He's just a big Voyager. That's the only thing you get out of this. After all that, he's just taller than average. I need to go lay down. Oh, and he comes with the gun he has in the movie. For some reason, the way the arms are shaped, he's got it angling down at all times. It's weird, but it's the least disappointed thing on this. This doesn't look like his typical G1 blaster, but supposedly that's because it's designed after Megatron's gun mode, which I just don't see. You can make his G1 blaster though, but it just looks awkward and it takes away his shoulder cannon. Eh, it's cool, I guess, some extra playability. Fun. He can also dual wield, but with how the shoulders work, he's dual wielding both guns pointing in the same direction. It's not like this figure where it has proper shoulders and can point in any direction it wants. And hey, we can also store them on the back. Yippee. Overall, this figure's just disappointing. Even if you only care about the robot mode isn't that good. It looks wrong. It doesn't articulate well. Some points where you articulate it, it completely ruins the look. The Ravage gimmick works, but that's to be expected. And with everything you sacrifice, you get nothing. Don't get this figure. Please, if you get any Soundwave figure, get this one. It'll actually be worth your time.